All right, Boaz, we're finally doing the podcast together. I'm very, very excited to have you here. You're a lot of things that are relevant to what's going on right now with startups and entrepreneurs and deal flow, funding, and AI. And I know you and I are just off of a very eye-opening event in Gainesville at the University of Florida. Your company, Artifact, sponsored this whole AI summit, right? And it was crazy because I like the vast array of perspectives on the topic of AI was mind-blowing, right? And so what I was hoping to pick your brain about today is what AI and how entrepreneurs and startups introduce it into their businesses and companies is a top pain point right now. And that I think is not really very surprising. And it's a topic that we bumped into at the summit, right? Is AI a product forward strategy, technology platform? Is it operational, right? Like first of all, let's get your take on AI, because you're very bullish. You're actually more bullish on it than I am. So let's get your take on AI and entrepreneurship right now. Just a quick overview.
So my take on AI is that it's no different than any other technology where over time, people understand it better. And time allows you to have real context. And I think AI has been so fast that all of us are struggling to have real context to make good decisions. But I think at the end, everyone needs to decide how AI is going to fit their core mission.
And how do you,
for the company.
So right there, let me just jump in. How do you figure that out, right? When you're working with founders and you're like right in a hub, like a whole ecosystem of entrepreneurship in Alachua. And so okay, that's cool, but how do you do that?
You need to be inclusive in terms of who's discussing AI in the organization. It can't just be a conversation with C-suite individuals in a conference room, right? Because that in itself doesn't give you context. It needs to be an inclusive conversation where you're inviting people who are, pounding the pavement, the frontline workers into the conference room, so that you have a real big picture in terms of where AI can fit. And it's possible that after this holistic conversation where you invite anyone across the entire organization, from the secretary to, sales, marketing, get everyone in a room, it may be that the real needle will only really be moved in marketing, or maybe it's only moved in sales. And you can't know that unless everyone is in a room having that conversation. And I think that's the kind of approach we're helping our clients take is let's not have this conversation in a silo. Let's start off getting everyone in the room across all departments. And one thing that we're doing is when we have these, what we call them AI sprints, where we kind of introduce AI, we have found that the best introduction of AI is getting people to actually use AI while we're discussing it, so that people can have a less highly conceptual conversation about it, but a real active hands conversation. So one of the things that we do as an activity is someone is interested in AI as CEO, right? He doesn't want to be using AI, but he's interested in it because it could affect his business. Well, we'll ask him, have you ever used AI? And what are you using it for? And have you ever built your own product? Have you ever tried building your own product? Get your ideas out. That exercise is really good for executives to really get their hands dirty in AI, to see the power of it. But then it also helps kind of streamline, okay, this is nice, but it's not going to help move the bottom line sales.
Right? Exactly. I think that's the, kind of the holy grail right now, is talking about AI is so cool, right? I have this love-hate relationship with it because it really messes up good editorial, right? And good human voice, right? I find it very irritating, but I also find it fascinating in how it can expedite processes, right? Like on the operational side, you can automate a lot of things, right? So right now, like even when we were in Gainesville talking with all the startups out there, some of the students, it seems like AI. Do you remember the app industry or even like, ringtone industry, right? Like it seems like everybody is leading with AI products right now in the startup community, but there is tremendous blowback in the investment community from purely AI. Because if you can create an AI bot to perform a task, right, as a product, as AI forward product, so can everybody. It's open source, right? So like, let's talk about that a little bit. So for founders and startups, right? And we talk to a lot of them and some of them are so cool, right? And like they have all these things and some of them are very tactile products, right? Like when you are coaching those founders, how do you start? And the idea that you're talking about of always having some kind of AI lab or any kind of creative lab, really, all companies should have that, right? But what is your advice to founders when it comes to, are you an AI? Do you lead with AI in your offerings, or is AI a back office support bot?
That's an excellent question. I mean, at the end of the day, the founder or founders need to know what exactly is the use case for their product, right? I mean, there are some products that are better being heavy on the AI side. I mean, you look at like a market research product. For instance, right now we're building a product for real estate that is for real estate agents who want to have a better management of their leads and things like that. Like AI is really good with that because it can do a lot of the market research that you simply cannot do that fast. But when you're talking about deploying a product that beckons some sort of human interaction, then you absolutely must consider the human part of the product you're putting together. And that is the most difficult part. Like, for instance, NeuroMatch, which is a product that I'm working on, it is a product to revolutionize the hiring process, getting rid of the old antiquated job posting and resume thing that no one really uses anyway to hire at this point. But there's a huge human element to that. So you cannot go in like a bull in a china shop thinking that AI is going to fix a human problem. Because in the end, whether it's security or tech or anything else, in the end, it's always a human problem you're trying to fix. It's never just purely a technological problem you're trying to fix. And I think it's important for founders to be honest with themselves up front. Are we trying to fix a tech problem, or are we trying to fix a problem that requires some sort of human problem to be fixed alongside of it? That is going to really, really give you your direction forward on how careful and thoughtful you need to be about the MVP.
Let's go back for a second and talk about NeuroMatch, right? Because you're an entrepreneur, you work with entrepreneurs, you do branding, you do marketing, you through this really cool summit in Gainesville. So let's talk about NeuroMatch, because when you started, we started this interview, one of the first things you threw out there is that we need to be more inclusive, right? And so let's talk about your journey with NeuroMatch, because it's very personal to you. So kind of walk us through your aha, where you are in the project, and how AI fits into all of it.
So inclusion is important, obviously, to me, because I have two boys with autism. And when you talk about the spectrum, I mean, it really is, truthfully, the spectrum. And I have the spectrum at home. I have an adult son who is limited in his speaking ability, and he has epilepsy, but he communicates via typing. And he's an entrepreneur. He owns his own, bike repair business, and you don't have to speak to repair bikes, right? So he found his niche. He made an accommodation, if you will. Whereas my other son, he's a junior at UF and very verbal and intelligent, but has a lot of social challenges and hard to navigate the social intellectual part of work, because when you get into an office, you're not just navigating the skill sets, you're navigating the space, the people, the expectations. There's a huge human element to work beyond the task. So NeuroMatch really is embedded in the idea of that if you have universal design as your core principle for a product, then although the impetus perhaps is about people with autism or inclusion, but universal design is about including everyone. And the classic example is you can build a staircase to go into your home, and it is not inclusive because not everyone can use a staircase, or you can use a ramp, and that automatically includes everyone. You may not need a ramp, but you can still use it, right? So that is what we're trying to do is NeuroMatch is trying to use the principles of universal design that is very, very embedded into the inclusion conversation and build something that is good for everyone. Now, one of the best use cases is YouTube. They at the early days, they wanted to have this automatic closed captioning function where it happens without you having to manually type in your entire dialogue. Well, the person who headed that up was someone who had a disability. And so initially the impetus was, let's help this segment of individuals with disabilities. Well, what they have found years later is the vast majority of people turn on captions, even though they don't need it. Yeah. Right? And so what a wonderful universal design where it started off for this segment, but it ended up benefiting everyone. And that's the core principle of NeuroMatch is what can we do to move the hiring interaction so that it's better for everyone, including the employers, where they have a much better sense of who they're hiring, having real authentic understanding of who the person is on the other side of that platform. Because we're not just doing inclusion, we also want authenticity. And as an employer, and I need to go onto a platform, I don't want to be scared that the version I'm getting on this platform is a completely inflated version of the person. And then when I finally hire them and I ask them to do the most basic task, like it's like, splitting atoms, if you will.
We've all been there.
So that's, so there's a whole other part of it is how do you use AI as the antidote to AI and turn it on itself to help create more authenticity in terms of the hiring practice.
Then you start to get meta, right? When you're talking about AI turning on itself and, going off and becoming more authentic, that's when it gets into, a little bit more of a philosophical realm. But we're not going to go there today because it's too early,
not
right?
Today.
My synapses are not awake yet, Boaz. But one of the things about NeuroMatch, right? I just want to make sure that everybody who is listening to this understands that, this is not some sort of side project for you. You have investors, you have partners, you have developers, right? And it's beautiful. And I've played around with the interface a little bit. And, so what is the next phase? Like, where are you in the execution of the business and the platform?
Well, we're in the seed stage, and we're thoughtfully trying to select a seed partner that understands the vision. Is that different? Is this particular project more challenging? It is because we're looking for an investor that understands the value of inclusion to be a true partner at the seed level. And then, I've had conversations with other more VC type. Like I had a wonderful conversation with someone from Lobby Capital, and he's just the founder is a great guy, but we're not ready for him yet because he's VC. So we'll get there, but at this early stage, we want to have real partners at the seed. So we're meeting with a couple of venture capitalists that understand the vision. As a matter of fact, there's one VC firm that is very connected because they themselves are impacted personally from autism. And there's a lot of money out there for autism tech, if you will. I don't want to coin that term. It is a thing. And so right now we're just walking carefully to make sure that we have the right partners starting up. And in the rest, I think we'll just organically just grow. I think the HR tech space is poised for so much more
I was
investment.
going to ask you about that because, when you were talking earlier about how, CEOs should be in the sandbox playing around with AI and then you've got sales and marketing. But HR right now, they're going rogue with AI, right? And so what happens in later stage companies is that there is absolutely no governance with how AI is deployed across a company, right? And oftentimes it's not secure. So, I think it's really great. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if you do either, but that HR niche, there is a lot going on right there, as far as opportunities and as far as like secure AI. What do you think we are in an AI bubble? Or do you think this is just like this blob is here to stay?
I think the response is a little bit of both. Like, I think there is a real bubble right now where you've got those who are, just AI crazy and like everything needs to be AI. And if, we don't fully deploy AI in every corner of our business, we're going to, I think that's the bubble. But I do believe AI is here to stay. I think companies like McKinsey, who say that they have 60,000 employees, but 20,000 of those are AI agents. McKinsey is not going to deploy AI agents unless it's moving the bottom line, right? So I think we're going to get to a place where companies will know where to carefully and thoughtfully deploy AI, but perhaps only in one segment of their business, but it really does help the bottom line across the board. And there are other companies in the spaces where they're going to have to just adjust to AI because it's not going to be a choice if you want to be competitive, right? So I think it's a little bit of both. I think we're definitely in a bubble. There's no doubt about that. And that's why I'm really excited about, Artifact and the Artifact Summit, because what we're trying to do is temper AI with humanity through dialogue, conversation, and even the product with NeuroMatch, I think really is, how do you temper AI with, actual human parameters and architecture? And I think that's what excites me. I think we can do it. I myself feel like I don't have enough context yet to truly understand.
I think we're all kind of in that same, like it's so exciting to be on the edge of a new frontier and all of this, the new capabilities and the things that we're all, with Claude Code, like, you can do anything. Like anyone can code. It's astonishing. I did have a conversation with a VC, a very well-known VC, and I'm not going to give you his name, but I think you probably know it because I don't want to out him. But I had a conversation before I went out to your summit, and he is very into Claude Code and really, and he still gets a lot of pitch decks, and he said, right now when I get pitch decks from startups, coming through my my VC process, he's like, I look for typos in the pitch decks because then I know a human had a hand in it. And I said, well, man, can I write that story? And he's like, no, because then every deck I get will have typos and they will be, programmed into the bot, to insert a typo every so often. So it's like this catch-22, but I think we need to be really fearless in how we approach AI, but never confuse that fearlessness for recklessness. You know what I mean?
Excellent. Yeah. Nicely said. And I think, in the end, humans will win. And
I hope so. I don't think because there are a lot of people. You and I happen to be, extremely optimistic, right, and curious about how far we can push the machine. But the doomsdayers, Man, what a collection of buzzkill. You know what I mean? It's just like it's the end. Skynet is here. Humanity is over. Go to Ecuador, go surfing, check it, because humanity is finished. I do not believe that. Because there's so much good still in people, right? And even like at the event and meeting with the students and the startups and your cohort, my faith in humanity was restored because people are cool, right? AI is not cool, right? It has no editorial judgment. It has no sense of humor. It doesn't have what we have, right? Those human emotions and senses. And those are utterly, hopefully not replaceable. But, I don't know. But I think, it's out of the box. So,
yeah, I mean, to me, I look at AI and I think of a car, right? A car can be used to accomplish a lot of things. It can be used as a weapon. It's been used before, right? It's the driver, and that changes the purpose of the car. So I think, we're in the same boat where you're not going to avoid the idea that there aren't going to be some people behind AI looking to use it for nefarious purposes. But in the end, it will have value. It does have value already. How much value it will have, I think, will be decided in the conference room for every business. They need to decide how much value AI has to their business model, and then determine how to deploy it based on what they've discussed. But I think that conversation just needs to be had. I mean, you just can't, I think what companies can't do is just send out a memo to every employee and just say, hey, start using AI because you've got to learn it.
Right. No, it's so true. And I think eventually, I just wrote this piece because there's some things about AI that just piss me off, right? Like it encourages laziness, right? Like as an editor in chief, as a writer, as a journalist, I have a critical eye, right? I am a tough audience. And I'm telling you, the stack of AI garbage that I get on the daily trying to pose as editorial and original thought, it's remarkable, right? It's like people, fine, use AI to get a framework, right? But use your voice. And I think it's not necessarily just with content, right? Like you have to use your voice and find your voice in everything you do with AI. Coding is a language, right? We are putting new languages out there, but we have to have some, we have to keep our DNA on our creations, right? Otherwise, it's a kludge together, creation of other people's ideas, right? And I cannot overstate, like, if you are writing a cool column or opinion, a LinkedIn post, right? Be discerning, right? Because I'm telling you, El Editore, me, I'm watching and I'm not loving what I see. You don't do that, but a lot of, the thought leadership that we see on different platforms is just being like, it's, nothing more than, keen wrap-ups, SEO, gimmicks. And I think that holds true for a lot of the, the more tactile things coming out of AI. So
yeah, and I like that word discerning because it's not a word used very often, and it is such a powerful word. And one of the panelists that you met was Run Bin Dong, who is the founder of Scale Social. And, him and I have always had this real connection because we're both convinced that in the future, I would say near future, authenticity is going to be an economy all within itself. And it's going to have real value when people are able to know that what they're seeing, what they're being fed is truly authentic.
And I think we're getting there, right? I think there's an awakening, right, about what, like, authenticity is very hard to measure, right? My authenticity happens to be just pretty much what you see is what you get, right? My husband, right, he is a terrible writer. He's always been a terrible writer. When he puts his terrible writing through AI, it comes out as terrible AI festooned writing, right? Like, like we need to be discerning, and we need but what is authenticity, right? Like, what does that equal? It's very easy to toss that word around. I look like my Italian grandmother over here. But what is it, right? Like, people like you and me in the business of finding voice and finding tone and, all of that, we know what it is, but what is it really? Are we redefining what authenticity is with all of the AI that we're using? What's happening?
Well, I mean, to your end, like, no one has told you what your authentic self is. You've established who your authentic self is, right? And I think that is the use case. Is companies are going to have to establish and clearly communicate who their authentic self is, to allow their audiences to be able to make a distinction between what they're being fed as being authentic or not. And I think that's part of the problem is that there isn't a standard way or an effective way for you to make that distinction as to what is or isn't authentic. I think when we were with those journalism students at UF, they were pretty quick to figure out what is and what isn't authentic, right?
Exactly. And the blowback from the Super Bowl commercials, right? People's tolerance, right? When you're a brand or a company and you go out and you make a broad sweeping statement, just like what you and I have been talking about, when you say, we're all about humans, we're all about people and connections and the real, vibe among human beings. And then you poop out a bunch of AI avatars and AI, M-dash filled headlines and, creative assets. That is disingenuous and inauthentic, right? You gotta live it. Right? You got to practice it and you got to be it. And I appreciate when people look at the busy website and they're like, hey man, it's cool that you're here on our campus talking about the First Amendment, but you're using AI generated images on your website, right? And you know what? We are. A lot of people are, so it's a question of how do we govern how we use AI when it's a forward facing piece of content, or message.
Yeah, and I think the opportunity we have here is to preface what we are doing as either AI or not, meaning
full disclosure type
stuff.
stuff.
To my partner, exactly. Like, if I talk to my partner about, if we were to use AI imagery in any way, shape, or form, do we have the responsibility to our audience to somehow have maybe an icon? So we're thinking about maybe having this new industry icon where you don't have to put AI generative material, but an icon
like a watermark, right? Like, we are acknowledging that this is AI generated, right?
Exactly. And being very upfront so that, because I think at the end of the day, to your point about the Super Bowl commercials, the problem was that there was a conflicting message, right? We're all about this, but then this happened. But if you would have had a preface to what you were about to do and say, we know we said, however, we do want to do this, maybe the preface would have settled the dust a little bit. And I think that may be something we may see. We're working with an organization called the Content Authenticity Initiative, the CAI, and they have awesome principles, CP2A principles about making sure that creative content can be distinguished as being authentic or not. And we're using that CP2A principles to apply to NeuroMatch. Because the way I felt was, if you're going to have governing principles to keep something authentic for a creative thing, why not have that same standard for work, where it has the greatest impact on people, right? And I think we're moving in that direction where, at the end of the day, I am who I am, but if I do something that's not within who you think I am, I'm going to let you know in advance. So you don't freak out.
Exactly. And it's just, authenticity, there's an honesty about it, right? That that honesty is what builds truth. And when you start burning that, right? Like, that you're burning through your trust. You're burning bridges of trust, and
Right.
it just is not cool. But as we're kind of wrapping up here, Boaz, thank you first of all for taking the time.
Sure.
Like, I've interviewed you 50 million times, but this is the first official one. What is your, especially on the heels of that magnificent event at University of Florida and in Alachua, and we went to the Entrepreneur Museum. How cool was that? There was
Super
a
cool.
1984 Apple computer under hermetically sealed display glass. 1984, I threw a combat boot at my sister's head when she wouldn't put it on Friday night videos on MTV. But it's now an antique. So, I mean, not the combat boot, the computer. But anyway, like,
Oh, okay. Maybe they're both antique at this
right,
point.
exactly. But after all of these, shared experiences that we've had, and the conversations that we're having that are very important, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs and founders and people sort of on the edge of that, just starting a business? Like, what do you have, like 2 or 3 sentences of advice for these entrepreneurs?
Use AI to develop your ideas. I think that's powerful at the very, very beginning. Temper that same AI with humanity. Think about your product, your end user, and have open dialogue with the people you're trying to get buy-in. I think having partnerships and community buy-in is the new way forward for investment. I think people need to be invested before investors are invested, if that makes sense. And I think that's just a good path forward. And, but like I told you before, just for a founder to not leverage AI to get their MVP together is just, you just can't compete with other founders. The ideas are too fast.
Awesome.
That's it. I don't know if that was paramount.
No,
I
think it's really important
anything.
because we, like, it's very easy to get floaty and philosophical about AI, but it's a mission critical tool right now. And just like you said, to stay competitive, you have to figure out how you're going to use it, right? And you're using it, don't let it use you, right? Like, you need to master how you're going to turn this into, really one of the most powerful technology advancements we've ever seen in our lifetime. So.
Yeah. And from Artifact's perspective, I kind of feel like at the end of the day, storytelling still is part of the equation.
Everything starts with
AI,
story. Everything. Your greatest
Yeah.
asset is not AI. It's not Claude code. It's your story. Always has been, always will.
Exactly. And humans are the subject of those stories, never AI.
Exactly. Although that I've read a couple of pieces now and AI is becoming the story, but whatever. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. And thank you so much for your gracious hospitality a few weeks ago in Florida. Appreciate it.
Good. Hope to see you again next year.